Hey guys, welcome to my Vermintide 2 Hero Tutorial Series. I'm Potates and today we're taking a look at Sienna, the Bright Wizard and her 3 advanced classes. The Battle Wizard, the Pyromancer and the Unchained. This video will cover the abilities she has, the talents she gets, and the weapons she can use for each class. This is in no way a late game tutorial and is simply here to give you an idea of what to expect when playing this hero. So before we start, I need to make the point that Sienna doesn't use ammo. She instead has a mechanic called Overcharge. That means when Sienna uses a ranged attack, she will build that overcharge meter, and when it reaches the end, she will explode, taking heavy damage. Most of the time, outright killing her. You can vent your overcharge meter, which damages you, or let it naturally decay. Now, the first advanced class is the Battle Wizard, and she's the closest thing you're getting to a pure range DPS from Sienna. Depending on your staff, you can do a wide range of things from being a great crowd controller or taking down individual targets fast. Her passive is Tranquility, and it makes it so you have less downtime with your ranged attack output, as you can release Overcharge quickly. You need to avoid being hit or using your ranged weapon for 8 seconds for it to trigger, but you can use your melee. Having higher overcharge will increase your range heavy attack speed, and naturally your range damage is increased. Her career skill is Flame Walk, and it's a teleport forward. Fire will be left between you, dealing decent amount of damage over time. The Battle Wizard is about dealing high range fire damage, and if she's too overcharged, entering melee briefly until she can fire again. Most of the time though, you won't need to enter melee, so this is the advanced class for you if you want to make the most out of Sienna's range. Pyromancer is up next, and this is a confusing class, to me at least. If it had the career skill of the Battle Wizard swapped around with it, I would say that this is a true melee hybrid. But alas, the Pyromancer can be played by building up high overcharge, then getting into melee and swinging away with high crits. It can also be played as a pure range character if you have the right talents that attribute to reducing your overcharge. Her passive is Critical Mass and increases her critical chance with a high overcharge and just flat out increases her range damage. Her career skill is the Burning Head, and it sends out a powerful projectile that can outright kill specials and continues to seek others. Its best thing is it refreshes really quickly. The last advanced class is the Unchained. This is your melee mage. Her passive ability is Blood Magic, and it makes it so 50% of the damage you take is transferred to your overcharge meter. Higher overcharge also makes you deal more damage in melee and makes your blocks cost less. Blocking also vents your overcharge, and overcharge doesn't slow you down. So with the Unchained, you want to build up your overcharge, dealing increased damage, and when in trouble, start blocking to consume that overcharge. You can also use your career skill and some talents to completely clear your overcharge when you're in trouble. And the career skill is a pretty sizable explosion around Sienna, dealing a lot of area effect damage. One thing to note about this class is that 50% damage taken transferring to overcharge can kill you by capping your overcharge out and making you explode. So it's a high risk, high reward situation. So that's the 3 advanced classes. Now let's go over each one's individual talents, starting with the Battle Wizard. At level 5, you get the choice of extra healing received, an extra stamina shield, or increased range recharge speed. Look, if you're running the Battle Wizard and finding yourself needing more healing or stamina, you're playing the wrong class. Get the range recharge speed. At level 10, you get increased power when around multiple enemies, a reduction in damage when Sienna is the last hero standing, and reduced stun duration from being hit by enemies. Once again, the choice should be fairly obvious: increase power please. This all being said, I'm sure someone can find use out of the others, but why? Run another class you want to play that way. At level 15, you can reduce the stamina cost of blocking, reduce the range recharge time, or increase the effect while Tranquility is active. Once again, block we can avoid, and reducing the range recharge time will only apply to the next attack, as using a range attack will turn Tranquility off. Centered is the way to go, as it increases the overall effect of the passive, which will help you do your job. At level 20, like every other class, this is a choice between temporary health when you crit, temporary health when you kill, or permanent health when you kill a boss. These don't overheal you past your max. With the Battle Wizard, I would recommend either Soul Snare or Blazing Harvest, as getting crits won't be as common as some of the other classes unless you have something like the Huntsman in your party, for example, or crit-based gear. At level 25, you can reduce the cooldown of Flame Walk, make the trail last 10 seconds longer, or make it so the skill removes your overcharge. This is a hard choice between casting it more often and changing the skill to a pseudo ammo refresher. With Burnout, you can spam your range damage until you're nearing max, then use Flame Walk to teleport away or through enemies, turn around and keep the damage going. Okay, so now let's start on the next class's talents, the Pyromancer. At level 5, the Pyromancer gets a reduction in range damage spread, an increase in attack speed, or a reduction in overcharge generation. This is the first set of 3 that I can truly say it's a tough choice of mostly personal preference and what weapons you're using and even how you like to play. At level 10, you can reduce the damage taken while disabled by 50%, increase overcharge decay speed when one of your team has a grimoire, or reducing spell charge speed by 15% when below 30% HP. My personal preference is Dissipate, as this will mean you can keep more damage pumping out most of the time. The other 2 are about survivability, and I personally think that this class isn't about that, but the next skill makes it more possible. At level 15, you get the ability to reduce stamina cost the more overcharge you have, reducing overcharge gained the more overcharge you have, or increasing attack speed the more overcharge you have. Do you want to be tankier? Do you want to put out more damage for longer? Or do you want to put out damage faster in a more bursty way? The choice is yours, but I would go either Blazing Equilibrium or one with the Flame. At level 20, you get the standard talents, and I would go with Soul Snare or Blazing Harvest again, but since you have the crit, all 3 are viable. At level 25, you can choose between removing all overcharge when you cast your career skill, restoring a small amount of health, or reducing its cooldown. Some would argue with me, but I'm gonna say get Exhaust every time. Since the career skill regenerates so damn fast, you can spam your range, and through a mix of Dissipate, Blazing Equilibrium, and your career skill, you'll never really need to stop the damage coming. So finally, let's move on to the next class's talents, the Unchained. At level 5, you can increase the block and push arc, increase your maximum overcharge, or increase your maximum health. All of these are fairly good, but I would recommend choosing Form of the Fire and Wind. This class is already quite difficult for newer players, and taking a bit of damage and exploding because you weren't watching your overcharge meter can be painful. More overcharge means a bigger safety net. At level 10, you can increase your stamina regeneration after a successful melee, get health from temporary health when bosses die, or when you revive allies, they get a damage shield. All of these have their uses, but Essence Siphon works well with your level 20 talents that grant you temporary health, or if you drop while taking a boss. If you find yourself not needing that help, Fury is generally the way to go since you'll be in melee a lot. At level 15, you can reduce the damage taken from venting, increasing the rate of venting or reducing the amount of overcharge generation. This one is a fairly easy choice, get Natural Talent. It effectively gives you more survivability, whereas the others require you to vent, which stops you dealing damage and does damage to you. If you desperately need to vent, you might need to learn to manage your already large overcharge meter a little better. Standard level 20 talents, but Soul Snare is great when you have Essence Siphon, so pick what you need. At level 25, you can increase the radius of Living Bomb, increase the damage of Living Bomb, or reduce the cooldown of it. I personally prefer reducing the cooldown, as Living Bomb also clears your overcharge. It's an oh shit button when your overcharge gets too high, and having it up more often is very needed, especially since it recharges so slowly. Now it's time to take a look of some of the weapon options for Sienna, and she has some really cool ones. The first melee weapon we're going to take a look at is the Fire Sword. Now this does wide sweeps, crowd control, and damage over time. Now let's have a look at it. It sweeps through armor, and what you can't see here, because these are training dummies, is that it applies a dot effect. Now this dot effect, damage over time effect, does a lot of damage, and it really means that your friends, the rest of your squad will help clean up the enemies that don't die initially from your swings. It also blocks with about 3 stamina without any investment, and if you charge it, you do this. And you can't see it against these training dummies, but it does push everyone back slightly and apply a damage over time effect. The next melee weapon is the mace. And the mace has high damage, damage over time as well, which most of Sienna's melee weapons have because she's fire, why not? And it has wide sweeps. Now this is for taking on your armored targets, like so. Hitting them in the head does a lot of damage. And most of the time when you overhead charge, you will be hitting the head. It does sweep, it does hit multiple people in a large arc if you need to as well, and it applies that dot. The next weapon is the dagger. It has damage over time as well, crowd control, and its fast attacks. You can see very fast attacks. And with a stab, you can a lot of the time get the head. This is the damage over time portion when you charge it, like so, bam. Next is the sword, the regular sword. This has fast attacks, wide sweeps, and is versatile, and is the only weapon that doesn't do damage over time. Lots of sweeping. It's versatile, you can use it in a lot of situations. Does hit the head fairly easily. Now, the range weapons is where it's at for Sienna. The first one I'm going to take a look at is the beam staff. This is your sniper, crowd control, and damage over time weapon. This is why it's a sniper. Because you can leave the button pressed in, you walk slightly slower, but you can hit where you need to. Your overcharge builds fairly slowly with it, and if they get too close, you hold right click in, press left, and you'll push everyone back in front of you and deal a dot. It's very, very cool, very useful, and it's an interesting staff. The next one is the conflagration. I can't even pronounce that. Conflagration staff, that's how you pronounce it. And it is a high damage, damage over time, and wide sweep weapon. So it does the regular fire bolt type attack with a left click. And with the right click, you hold in and then press left click, you will do a big AoE wherever you want it. This does a lot of damage and applies that dot, so if there's huge groups, doing this a few times will ensure you get a lot of overcharge, but it will also clear out the rabble. So let's have a look at the next staff, and the next staff is the bolt staff. This is rapid fire headshot damage and a sniper. This is probably my favorite weapon because of how it attacks. Check this out. If you leave left click pressed in, look at that. That is absolutely amazing. Now, if you hold in the right click, you charge up a spear and able to snipe with it as well. It is fairly accurate. You can get the heads pretty easily with it as long as they aren't moving around too much. The next staff is the Firestorm staff. Firestorm staff, much like the Ironbreaker's fire weapon, it's like a flamethrower. Let me just ventilate here. If you leave in right click, you charge up a bigger amount. Press left click, you can leave it pressed in for longer. This hits a lot of people and it applies that dot fairly readily. High damage, damage over time, wide sweeps. Whoops, sorry, wrong one. Damage over time, charge attack, close ranger. Now, the next one is the fireball staff. And I haven't gotten many of these this run through at least, but you shoot a standard fireball with your left click. Right click, you charge up a bolt that you can hold and walk around with, but it does keep your overcharge building. And you can release it with the left click and it does a big AoE explosion. And it's crowd control, damage over time, and overheat. So that is Sienna. Thanks for watching, guys. I had a lot of fun making this video and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and click that little bell below. And if you haven't already, be sure to join my Discord. It's full of fantastic, like-minded individuals and you get to talk to me directly as well. So I'm Potates and I'll see you next time.